So, as I stated in the community post I put out there a couple of days ago, unfortunately, I wasn't able to hit the mark of what I really wanted to do this year, which was return to my normal tradition of talking about 31 horror movies for each day of the month of October for the horror movie season. I think I gotten about a dozen of them done, and it just got the best of me. As I said in that post, I've also been getting over being sick. You might still hear it a little bit in my voice. Just shit happens. Nothing you can do about it. However, it being Halloween itself, I did feel like I should really get back up there and at least do the one for this day in particular. The reason that this is so important to me is because I love horror movies. I'm not going to say that horror movies are something I love more than any other type of film. I don't think I even have a specific niche that I like doing more than others. I just feel that because there is so much uniqueness that you can really give to horror films that I tend to lean towards watching those a little bit more than anything else. You know, you watch a comedy, it makes you laugh. It's sometimes always the same story over and over again. You watch a good action film for the action sequences. Nine out of 10 times, a lot of those stories aren't really the greatest stories in the world. They're good, but they're not things that will really blow you out of the water, unlike what their tremendous fight scenes can easily be. So yeah, I have just different feelings about things, and I feel like in the horror world, there can sometimes be a little, it can be a little stale, but then you come across some pretty unique films, and some films that can really stand out. Now, I don't even know if I can really say too many positive things about this film that hasn't already been said, but Weapons was a film that I was really looking forward to. I think I did 2 or maybe 3 reaction videos for it. It was highly anticipated for the whole sort of world, but also for me. Like, there is just so much positive stuff to talk about with this film that even when I see some of those things that people are saying that are negative, it's just really strange. Like, there's some sort of disconnect to how people are viewing films, that they look at that as like not not up to par with what expectations were. Unless there was something you really were going for in a way, like there's just something really, really enthralling about the way this film takes the story. And now you got to remember, we're talking about a film that Jordan Peele wanted so bad. He's one of the probably the top 5 horror directors of the last decade to a lot of people. You know, there's a lot of people. I actually think he's a really good director, but I'm kind of half and half with most of his films. But most people know his name from his long-standing career. He was so mad that he lost this film, he fired his entire management team. There is something about this film that got so much attention from that angle that if you went into it and your expectations were just through the roof and it didn't meet those, I can see why you probably have some negativity for it. The only thing that I wish the film explained a little bit more, which I don't want to make this a full negative, talking about this film for this video, but there is one thing that I feel like should have been explained a little bit more, and that's exactly where the aunt's origin kind of is from. Like, it's never really explained, like, what the connection to the overall family is with with this woman who is the niece, and she comes in and she has this power and this ability to control people. It is basically witchcraft, but you're just meant to assume witchcraft. There's nothing that really explains it, which I guess maybe that little bit of that little kind of imaginative leap that your mind has to go to could add to that. But to me, I felt like just maybe a couple of lines of dialogue to sort of explain a little bit more. But once the whole turntable comes of what everything is happening, it answered all of my questions from what I was talking about in the reaction videos. I knew that Weapons had to do with something that is turning people into something. I thought it may have been chemical warfare, or it could have been something demonic or something. I don't mind that it's results to witchcraft. Now, I'm probably spoiling a lot now for anybody who hasn't seen it, but it's been out for a couple of months, and again, it's the most highly anticipated horror movie of this summer, so if you haven't seen it yet and I spoil anything, forgive me, but maybe don't watch the rest of this if you're really mad at me about it. But this idea of it being the witchcraft is enough in and of itself a twist where every bit of what you might have expected to see that. I don't know. I don't believe witchcraft is something I came up with. I know I said something that has to do with military. I know it has something that has to do with some sort of chemical warfare, but it's not chemical. It's actually just this sort of paranormal power that she has over whoever she's able to put the spell on. And that to me just it added a little something else to all of these other really creepy and really well photographed scenes. Like everything that was kind of put into place to build up tension for all of the twists and turns the stories take is done very, very well. And it's just another example of how Zach Kreger is doing such a tremendous job as a horror director now. And Barbarian was another great example of that. And now he's attached to Resident Evil. There's just so many cool and interesting things about how his approach. I don't even know if Jordan Peele would have done anything different, if it would have changed what the story was, but his approach, the Kreger approach to what he did with this is just, I still can't really get that scene out of my head where the main character is parked out in front of the house and it's been a couple hours, she passes out, all of a sudden the doors open to pure darkness and there's just this quiet like horror movie hum that starts building up, like kind of the theme of the film. And then the lady with the crazy blonde hair comes out and she's staggering and she's got a pair of scissors in her hand and she walks by the car, and that whole car scene is just so unsettling that you really expect it to lead to something just really, really out there. And then it sort of just continues to be unsettling and then just kind of mellows out and you just go, there's no resolution to that until you meet the character later. Now, I remember reading about this in somebody's post that I saw on, I think it was Twitter or Instagram, about what the basic format of the film is. And it is told from the perspective of six of the main focal points of the overall story. And I would have to say the one that's probably the one you feel bad for, I would say the most, is probably the cops. You feel bad for the teacher because she's kind of caught up in the middle of it. It just so happens to be her class and everybody assumes that it has to do with her class. And it turns out to not have anything to do with her. It has to do with the only boy who still kind of exists in the classroom. And you don't learn that until much later again. But then her storyline, you don't really feel bad for it because she is essentially still not the best person. And you see that in the relationship she has with the cop. Because when you see the cop's angle of things, he's not the greatest person either. He could be a real piece of shit, but he really gets a huge bit of the shit end of the stick. He gets poked with the needle, then he gets stabbed with the needle, and then he gets roped into having an affair with this girl, his ex-wife, who's the main other character, and then the other wife actually finds out, and then he works with her father, who's the chief of police, and then he goes and he gets the junkie, and he's like, I know where the kids are, and he's like, this will put me in good terms with everybody, and then he's one of the first that you see get turned, almost immediately, and then he turns the junkie. It's just... And then it ends with him just getting shot. It has to end like that because there's no way to break the spell at that point in time, and they're being attacked because he's taken over. He's been weaponized. He probably has the shittiest story of everybody. There were some things that I was reading that people were talking about how the junkie is sort of the overall hero of the story. And I would sort of agree with that. I think the junkie kind of stumbling into what is happening in the town when he's not really that much involved. He doesn't have any kids that are involved. The only real attachment he has is that the cop sort of helps him go to his end of the story. But the junkie is probably really the one you feel the most sorry for. And then you got the Josh Brolin character, and his story can get a little annoying. I do kind of agree with this too in a negative light, is that why is it that it's been almost a month and he's the only one that's really thought about, hey, let's see if we can cross-reference where all these kids are running. I get that maybe it's hard for the whole town to kind of grasp what they can do based on what they've already done, But being that everybody's been talking about this, how is he the first one to do it? And how does he not go to the cops with it? How does he not say, hey, I think I've discovered something? And the only time you see it like come to fruition is when he finally teams up with the teacher after bashing on her for almost the entire film and like writing witch on her car and things like it's a very interesting turn of events for his character, but I feel like it's unfortunate that he seems to be the one that's the most he's the most involved in everything, and the involvement takes a point when it is incorporated into every little bits of the story. So like he hates the teacher, but then the teacher goes and gets attacked, and so he tries to protect the teacher because he realizes that there's something really wrong here. And then he goes and he like tramples over other parents' privacy because he's like, show me your Ring camera so I can see the cross-reference thing. And that's how he gets to everything. So his level of involvement as a father, his whole premise of what he's willing to do is something that you would wish that somebody was doing earlier. Like the fact that they sit there and they go, it's been this long. Why is it taking so long for anybody to have this thought? And he's the first one to do it. That part is, I can definitely agree with some people who have something negative to say about this film, that part is something it kind of gets derailed. It derails the way the plot flows because you really ask yourself that this is such a reasonable thought process. This is such a reasonable way to think, especially when you're in a world where everybody has a camera. You can see all of them. You have all this footage. Nobody thought to question the direction all these kids are running. And maybe it's because they're all from different parts of the town, so they all think they're just running randomly in different directions. But that's like, isn't that the point of a police force and detectives and investigators? Like, they're supposed to think outside the box and try to figure this out. This guy's a fucking construction worker. Like, how is he solving this in a way? And then how do they not go to anybody with this information? Like, hey, we think we got something. No, they fucking go and Superman it, and they both almost get killed. The whole ending of this movie is just phenomenal. The way it just the cut to black at the final like crescendo of it all, the overall discovery of everything, the way the tables turn on the witch, everything is just tremendous. So that's why it has to be said that even if you might have these little quirks about where the story is, even you might have these little details that are left out or overlooked or overdone, whatever you want to say about everything that leads up to that, when you're talking about bittersweet endings, nothing beats how Weapons ends. The way this film, and I'm not going to talk about it, I talked about a lot already that might spoil some things for some people, but I'm not going to talk about the ending because that is just a moment that you live through after going through this story, and it just fills you with like, it's unsettling, but it's like joyful at the same time because it's such bitter, sweet. I don't want to say revenge because there's not really a revenge aspect, but to anybody except for you, the viewer, you can't do anything in this story. So when you see that ending, you go, that is probably the most satisfying way this film could end. And even if it isn't like, doesn't leave an opening for anything else, even if it doesn't seem like the most logical path to go through or anything, even though it really does, it really is the most logical way about how this could actually go through when you see the boy's story and you see how the boy gets to that point and you see how the ending unfolds. It's so awesome. It's such a relieving feeling, that ending, and that's really the best way I can describe it. It's probably, and I'm going to go out on a whim and say this, it's probably one of the best endings to a horror film, I'll say, in maybe the last 5 years. And now, I'm only saying that because I can't think of anything else that kind of tops it, and the film is still kind of fresh in my head. So it almost is like kind of that kind of just, it's newer, so I like it more, like it's shinier to me. But it really is such a tremendous way that film came to an end, and the close that it goes on, it's top notch. It's top notch to me, and you really can't beat the rest of it when you get to that ending. And I'm not going to ruin that ending. I think you should watch it if you haven't seen it yet, because there is a reason, there is an absolute reason this is one of the most talked about horror films of this year, and probably one of the top 5 of this year. I know everyone is talking about how this is a huge year for horror movies. This is one of the reasons. This film is one of the prime reasons why this is a great year for horror movies.